and welcome back to Beginning Algebra. Today we're going to work on lesson 7.4, which is factoring trinomials where the coefficient is no longer 1. We're in the middle of what I lovingly call the factor section. We're just doing a ton of factoring. We started out this lesson in factoring out a common factor and factoring by grouping. We're going to lean heavily into factoring by grouping today. And then we moved on to factoring trinomials, where the leading coefficient was a understood 1. With that, we learned some sign notes, which are also going to be super important today. Today, we're going to be talking about trinomials where there's a number in front of your variable squared. And these are a little bit more complicated. And so in order to be able to be successful in this, you really need to be able to understand factoring by grouping and the sign notes that we talked about earlier. If you're not that familiar with those, then I encourage you to go back and review those lessons now. Since multiplying and factoring are opposites, let's review multiplying, so give us a guideline of what our factoring should look like. So here I've got two binomials that I need to multiply. We talked about a couple of different ways to multiply this. Today, I want to focus on what we called a double distribution or the thumb method. And that said, we're going to take this first term and we're going to multiply it by this entire parenthesis. And so that looks something like this. We'd get 2x times this parenthesis 5x plus 1. And remember, when this second term is negative, then we're going to take a negative 7 times, again, this entire parenthesis of a 5x plus 1. We can distribute that in again. So 2x times 5x is 10x squared. 2x times 1 is 2x. Negative 7 times 5x is a negative 35x. And a negative 7 times 1 is a negative 7. Now, because these two middle terms are like terms, we can combine those and we get 10x squared minus 33x minus 7. So our goal for today is to go backwards. If we start out with 10x squared minus 33x minus 7, can we go backwards in order to end up with two binomial parentheses? So we're literally going to take this process and we're going to go backwards. And today we're going to learn something called the AC method. And so for the AC method, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our A value times our C value. So in this case, it's 10 times a negative 7 or a negative 70. And we're going to find all the pairs of numbers that multiply together to get to 70. 70 for right now. So that would be 1 and 70, 2 and 35. 3 does not divide evenly into 70. 4 does not divide evenly into 70. 5 divides evenly into 70 14 times. 6 does not. 7 and 10. 8 does not. 9 does not. 10 is already on our list, so that means we now have all the pairs of numbers that multiply together to get to 70. But notice, this is a negative 70. That means that one of the pairs has to be positive and the other pair has to be negative. Do you remember that from our sign notes yesterday? So we are going to look at the pairs of numbers that subtract to get a negative 33. And so looking, if I subtract these numbers, which of these can I subtract in order to get a negative 33? Well, 2 and 35 will subtract. And moreover, in order for it to become a negative 33, that means my 35 has to be negative and my 2 has to be positive. What are we going to do with these two numbers? Well, we're going to take our middle term and we're going to split it into two terms. So our first term's going to stay exactly the same. Our middle term is going to break into two terms, keeping the same variable and using the coefficients we just determined. So now we have 10x squared plus 2x minus 35x minus 7. Okay, now since we have 4 terms, we have a polynomial with 4 terms, we can do factoring by grouping. Remember, factoring by grouping says look at just the first 2 terms. What do they have in common? They have a 2x in common, so let's factor that out. So 10x squared divided by 2x is 5x, and 2x divided by 2x is 1. Now we're going to look at the next 2 terms, and we say, what do those have in common? And they have a 7 in common. But more specifically, because this third term is negative, we have to factor out a negative number. So now what is negative 35x divided by negative 7? 5x. And what is negative 7 divided by negative 7? That is 1. So now I've got these. Notice that my 2 parentheses are exactly the same, so I can factor out that parenthesis. And when I factor out that parenthesis, I get 5x plus 1 times the quantity 2x minus 7. So notice we just did the exact opposite of this, but just in reverse. So let's review the steps for factoring by the AC method. So first, we're going to find the AC number by multiplying A times C. Then we're going to find the pairs of numbers that multiply to get that AC number. Then we're going to use our sign notes from a previous lesson to pick the pair that combine to get B, the coefficient on the middle term. And then we're going to break that middle term into 2 terms using the pair of numbers determined above and the variable of the middle term. We now have a 4-term polynomial, and we can factor that by grouping. I hope this video helped you understand the steps for factoring by using the AC method. Please check out the next videos for more examples on this process.